Hey guys, today we are going to be taking a look at my Hodge 12.5 and talking a little bit about the way I have this set up with some forward controls parts. Now, if you follow us, you know we're friends with Hodge Defense. I also happen to be personal friends with some people that work there, and that helped me out 0% when it came to acquiring this rifle. So the upper receiver came from Big Tex Ordnance, which is one of Hodge's dealers. It was in their storefront, and it is a contract overrun upper, and so that was a complete build, and then I actually built out the lower myself, and there's some things about it that are a little bit of a departure from a normal Hodge rifle that we'll get into, but we'll go ahead and we'll start at the upper receiver group because unlike most of my rifles, I actually did purchase that as a complete upper assembly. The only things about it that I changed was I put a ACFL charging handle and an EPC on it, but other than that, it's basically how it came. This is a contract overrun 12.5 upper, and what that means is that a unit, somebody somewhere who's special wanted to buy some Hodges, and they had some left over when they were built. So they sold them over the counter. This one happened to be at Big Tex Ordnance, but Big Tex also had them on their website as well. This one uses a standard size gas port for Hodge Defense. It seems like they have two different gas port sizings, standard and large. This one is standard, and that's important. We'll get into that in a little bit. As far as how the buffer system all kind of came together and some troubleshooting I had to do on that part. So anyway, we'll just jump right into it. We'll go front to back. So on the front here, I have our 6315 KMS. So the 6315, you guys all know the 6315. It's one of our flash hider designs. The S means short, so it is a shortened version of that flash hider, but I can take my Dead Air Sandman, which is probably one of my favorite suppressors, even though there's a lot better options out there these days. And I can just throw it right on the front. And then when I am not using it, I can pull it off, and it is an incredible flash hider, and it has a closed bottom. So as you can tell, I kind of built this out as a GP rifle being painted to match the outdoors. So I might be shooting prone, and so having that closed bottom is, it's a big deal to me. So I enjoyed that. Moving back, I have a Surefire Turbo with a 100 Concepts light cap on it. Now, the light cap, again, is part of that general purpose use. I wanted to cover as many reflective surfaces as possible when I'm not using those enablers, and that's one thing that I like about the light cap is that it makes it super easy, kills that shine, and it also prevents white light negligent discharges if I'm not using my white light. Moving further back, I have the B.E. Myers Maul. You guys know how much I like the Maul. It's my favorite laser aiming module. I have a few others, but it's always the one I come back to on most of my rifle builds, unless there's some special use cases. But I like it for a couple reasons. One, I don't have to have any extra pressure pads. It has the built-in pressure pads, and it works really well with the Unity Tactical Hot button. This is a discontinued product. They offer the Axon now, but I had a hot button, so I put it on there. The hot button has some cable management going on with our PCM. I also just did a video on PCM, so if you guys are interested in that, that should be over on our channel. Now, talking about the importance of that rail, I run a few different enablers on here. I have the laser aiming module. I have this set up with a flip to side thermal, and I have shot this with a clip-on night vision device in the past as well. Now, all of that is important because I need those parts to maintain zero, and the Hodge P-Lock is by and large one of the sturdiest rails out there. But anyway, like I mentioned, I do run a thermal on here. Now this one is the iRay RH25 V2, and it's set up a little bit different than it comes out of the box. It does come with a Picatinny QD mount. I don't love it because it doesn't flip to the side when I want to be using my LPVO just in a standard, visible light use case. So there's a few things I did to it to modify it to get it to work with this setup. I am running a HRF Concepts RCS Rico compatible shoe, and what that does is it puts a dovetail on the thermal itself. It also lowers the mounting of it down to a 154, and with a Wilcox flip to side that's normally meant for like a detachable flip to side magnifier, I'm able to use this in the visible light spectrum and then flip over for the thermal spectrum. So that's pretty nice. You're probably noticing this little dangly tentacle I have going on here. All that is some paracord and a little carabiner that I can connect it to my upper receiver. This is a very expensive piece of equipment and I don't want to lose it. And so I just have a little piece of paracord that I tied into the handguard that I can clip that into. But when I'm not using that, I can just pull it off, and then the flip to side actually just sits pretty flush with it, which I do like. I'm gonna go ahead and get this taken off. So one thing I will say is that a lot of guys run their flip to sides this way for the thermal offset, and that's actually really good for over here when it's a magnifier, but I have found, at least just for my personal preference, I prefer if it's a clip-on that it actually flips the other way. I know that's going to obstruct my view a little bit when I shoot both eyes open, but I do like that if I'm on a bipod or some sort of resting position, it's a lot easier for me to just reach up and flip it over with my support hand versus me trying to reach up over here or trying to push over and pass my optic. I just like it that way. It's a personal preference. I've seen other guys run it the other way, and they're very effective with that tool. So just a note on how I had that set up there. Get this pulled off. Moving further back, I have a EOTech Voodoo 1 to 10. There are a lot of LPVOs out there that I've tried, and even out of all the Voodoos, this is the one I prefer the most. I've had the 1 to 6 and the 1 to 8 and this 1 to 10, and the 1 to 10 is by and large my favorite. When they went up to that 34 millimeter tube, they got a lot of stuff they were able to accomplish as far as light transmission and what they're able to do with the reticle in here as well. So I really like the 1 to 10. I have made successful engagements with this out to 800 yards with a clip-on night vision device and this optic, and a guy who knew a lot more about shooting out to distance than I did. So that was probably a big factor. Mount itself is a Badger Ordnance Condition 1 at a 154. Nothing too special about that. I do like the 154 mounting because if I do a top dot, I don't feel like my entire gun head is off the gun to shoot through the top dot. So I actually like the lower 154 height if I'm going to use a top dot, especially if I'm going to use a top dot, because then it's just more comfortable. The Voodoo 1 to 10 has a very, very large ocular side, and because of that, including the mounting pretty low, I actually use our ACFL. I did a video on the ACFL, which you can go check out if you want more information on that, but it is a wider version of our ACF. So it's great for LPVOs, especially ones that are mounted low like this one with a giant ocular lens. The sling setup. So the sling setup is our carbine sling with a QD on one side, and then our collab fixed sling loop that we did with rooftop defense in the front. Cerakoted FDE, of course. So the lower, you may have noticed, you may not have noticed, but it has a special crest on there. This was made available to a certain agency at a certain time for purchasing. There's the back side. It's just a Hodge lower, right? So really nothing that special about it. I'm not in that unit. I will never pretend to be part of any agency. But it was kind of cool that this came up available locally. The guy just basically made me promise that I would never get rid of it. So he was a cool dude. Shout out to that guy. You know who you are. The biggest departure from how you could purchase a Hodge Defense carbine, and the way I have this one set up, is I actually use the Voltor A5 system on all of my carbines. However, on Hodge Defense products, you're going to get a carbine length buffer tube. That's their choice. They get their guns to run really well with the carbine setup, but I prefer the A5. And every time I do the A5, I default to the H2. That is always what's worked best for me in all of my carbines. And that was the case until this rifle. Now, if you remember, the standard Hodge gas port is designed for a carbine buffer system and a carbine weight buffer. So once I swapped this out for a carbine weight A5 buffer, ran perfectly. It would only run suppressed when I had the H2 in here, but now it runs great in adverse conditions, dirty, suppressed, unsuppressed, by swapping over to a standard weight buffer in the A5 system. So if you like A5, that's something to be aware of. Hodge does offer a large gas port, which I'm willing to bet would run with the H2, but just keep that in mind. I, of course, have our QD end plate and our castle nut on here, and the Magpul dual tension stock. I've come to really like the stock on a lot of my general purpose rifles. On the controls themselves, I have a Magpul K2 grip. You guys know how much I love the K2 grip. And then I have our trigger guard, our bolt release, and our safety. Oh, and of course our mag release as well. These are all fairly standard parts you're gonna see on a lot of my builds. There's slight variations. This is a rearward bias bolt catch. This one is our standardized standard width ASF. It is not the winterized version. I do have the winterized version on my SPR, which I think we're gonna do a video on that one next. But just our standard ASF, and then a Geisley SSA trigger. So fairly standard trigger. As you guys know, I prefer the LRF as a lower receiver generally, but when I had the opportunity to kind of finish out a Hodge build, I was pretty excited about that. Hodge rifles obviously have a lot of lure and mysticism to them, thanks in big part to the internet, certainly not by their own intention or design, but it's a cool rifle. I really enjoy this rifle. It's my general purpose rifle with the LPVO and the different enablers I have on here that I can take off or put on as needed. So that is my 12.5. If you guys have any questions about any of our parts or about the build, go ahead and leave a comment, and always email in if you have product questions. You'll either talk to Roger or one of the other guys at the shop. I hope I answered all of your guys' questions, but if you have them, go ahead and reach out. Have a good day, guys.